Hi there, and today I'm going to go through all the different types of railway track that LEGO have ever made. As the plane goes over. So it all started in 1966 and LEGO produced their first ever train set, which was LEGO set number 113, and in that set you've got a small oval of track, and these are the track pieces. So as you can see, it was blue track with white sleepers. Now the sleepers are just absolutely normal regular 2x8 plates. There's nothing special about them, they're just regular plates. And the track pieces were these, so they're, as you can see, blue, and they've got a serrated edge on top to give the trains a bit of grip as they go along. And it's very easy. The blue tracks were 16 studs long. You'd attach the sleeper to one end and the sleeper to the other, and then you'd carry on 2 more tracks and another sleeper and keep going, and that would make your track. And lots of people think that the early era of trains was just push along or battery powered, but actually also a few years later in 1969 they added electrification to this, and I've got one of those here, and all that was another rail which sat in the middle. So you can see these are exactly the same, and this is a 12-volt track which sits in the middle, and the train would pick up its power plus and minus from that, which would drive the motor along. And I will just show you one of those engines, and here we have one of those motors. So it looks very similar to a modern railway LEGO motor, except it's got 3 sets of wheels on the side instead of the 2, and underneath you can see these spring-loaded metal pickups. So they would sit on the track and they would pick up the electricity from the 2 rails in the middle and drive the wheels. So very compact, that's all you needed. The electricity was supplied by an external control like the normal model railways to the centre rail, and that would power your track. So the normal blue track, this was started to be produced in 1969. It went on till 1980. The motorised version, so the electric track in the middle, came out in 1969. There were only 3 sets which had that in the early years, well ever actually, in the blue version. There were 2 train sets with this in, and also there was a pack of electric rails, so if you had your original push along rails you could add this and make it an electric version of the train. So that's what we had originally in the 1960s, and they lasted all the way up to 1980 when we got what was called the grey era. We had the blue era, this is the grey. Now these rails are the same as the blue, as you can see. Slight difference being they had these little notches in them. I'll show you that up close. So you can see the notches cut out, and that's because the sleepers were no longer just 2x8 plates. They had these special clips on them, and also this hole in the middle. So the hole in the middle was for serious railway modelers who wanted to fix their track down, so you could put a little screw or a pin, a nail in the middle of that, and these would clip onto the rails like this, and that would be a much stronger connection than just clipping it onto a stud on the 2x8 plates. So this is what they called the grey era, and this came out in 1980. Generally in the older sets you only got 2 sleepers per length of rail. When we went into this era they generally put a 3rd one in the middle. You can see the set of notches in the middle. So that was the grey era, and it started in 1980. We also, this was for battery powered trains or push along trains, but we also had a similar system to the blue era in that we got a motorised metal rail in the middle for pickups for electric trains, and they ran in comparison. They also came out in 1980, and this whole track series only lasted for 6 years, so it ran from 1980 to 1986, and there were some very famous and now very sought after train sets, one of which is, I'll show you this, one of these 7760. So this was unusual by today's standards. It was just a train on its own, not a train set. You just bought this in a box on its own, and this was again powered train. Nowadays you'd get this as a goods train with several trucks and an oval of track, but you got that on its own. You had to buy your track, and then you bought your controller as well separately. There were also train sets like we have nowadays, again either battery powered or push along or 12 volt powered. The 12 volt system also came with a huge amount of accessories. They had colour light signals, a decoupler, electric crossing barriers for cars to cross the road, which I'll show that in another video, and just loads of accessories, electric point controls, so you could control the points on your layout from one position, and all these switches plugged in together next to your controller, so you can control the trains and control the entire layout from one position. So a lot of people say this was like the heyday of Lego trains in 1980. We just had the 40th anniversary of that. It's 2020 at the moment, and they made a classic train as a giveaway with purchase of one of the older trains with a big 40 plaque, and lots of people thought it was 40 years of Lego trains, but it wasn't. It was actually 40 years of the grey era in 1980. So there we go, we have it, the grey era, which was 12 volt, 4.5 volt and push along, and that was 1980 to 1986. Now after that, those sets hung around for a while. Then in 1991 we got the 9 volt era. Now this looks like the track we have today. It's got the connections here in the middle, but these two rails are metal, so you'd have your rail connector connecting onto these, which go to a 9 volt transformer and a regular speed regulator, and you could control the speed of your train like normal, Hornby or 00 gauge model railways. So metal rails, and the motors would then pick the electricity up on metal wheels, which would go to the motor and run the train again. So you're running it by remote again from a fixed location. However, because we'd lost the 12 volt, we lost all the accessories. There were no longer any electronic accessories that went with the train, so like the colour light signals, this point controls or anything like that. We just had 9 volt. Now a lot of people think this is their favourite era. I prefer the 12 volt era. I thought it was a much better system with all the accessories you used to get, but again, this is very, very popular. A lot of people still use this today, and metal electric 9 volt tracks are very expensive on the secondary market. There's even several people who now make them third parties, and Lego don't make them anymore, but other companies make them to go with your train set if you have lots of 9 volt trains. So this was still in the old dark grey colour of Legos. There was a short period of time when the colour change in Lego changed from dark grey to that bluish grey, and this track was made in that colour as well, but that's a lot rarer than this. But this went from 1991 to 2003 when the colour change happened. Then that was from 2003 to about 2006 with the newer colour. Then in 2006 we got what we have today. So it looks identical to the 9 volt track in all respects, except it's one piece of moulded plastic. So this was one piece with the metal rail added on top. This is just one piece of track, no metal rail, it's just a piece of plastic. However, it does click together the same like that. So modern trains can run onto the old 9 volt track, but obviously 9 volt trains can't run on modern track because they've got no power being picked up anymore. But this is what we have today, so that's the most recent version. The only other type of track we've had is, in recent years, Flexi Track. Now these are very short, flexible units, as you can see, and 4 of them make up the equivalent of one straight. So you can see that there. And the clever thing about this Flexi Track is it's the same as one straight, as you can see, but also if we get a current curve, it will flex and be the same dimensions as the curve is. So 4 segments of track can either be the same as a straight or as the same as a curve, which is very useful if you get yourself into tight spaces and you need to connect 2 lines up and you haven't got quite enough space for a long track. You can put in a few short bits here and there and join your layout up that way. It's very noisy, this track, as the trains go over it, and it's not the most aesthetically pleasing of tracks, but it's a very useful item. So there you go, that's your short history of Lego track. We started off with the blue era, and that had its 12-volt counterpart. Then we had the grey era and its 12-volt counterpart. Then we went to 9-volt, and then we went to the modern radio-controlled, remote-controlled plastic track. The good thing to note about these is all the tracks over the years, they've all been 16 studs long, so no matter the age, every piece of track is the same 16 studs long. These don't quite fit together, but you can get adapter pieces that people have made online to connect these. But any train from today's Lego series will run on any of these tracks. The only compatibility issues you have are trains that pick up their electricity from the centre rail, or in the 9-volt trains that pick up their electricity from the outside rail. Today's remote controlled trains though will run on any of these, and it doesn't matter, it's all the same width. The actual standard of the track being 6 studs apart hasn't changed in all these years from 1966 to today, so any train will run on any track, which is great. So there you have it, there's a little brief history on Lego train track. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.